Yo, what's good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Gifted Hoops Podcast, episode 56. And today, I'm joined here by none other than Hayes, CEO Hayes. That's right. He does a lot of Chicago Bulls content, Locked On Bulls, Chicago. He reps it to the fullest. Also, my From the Logo co-host for Players Choice as well. Hayes, say hello to the people, man. What's good?
What's going on, everybody? Thanks for having me, Gift. You know I'm always excited to talk sports with you, brother.
Yeah, we be going through it a lot, and I have been talking about your team more than you have in our episodes so far. So finally having a dedicated podcast to fully break down your team, I'm actually hyped for. I think the first place to intro, actually, let me be like a real good host. Make sure to tap into Hayes's socials. All of those things will be in the description box below. Also, if you want the audio for this podcast, it's on Spotify and Apple Podcasts at Gifted Hoops, and the video version with our faces and Hayes' lovely Bulls hat will be on the YouTube side of things at Gifted Hoops. But I got the perfect first question. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
So I listened to the pod you did a couple days ago about Billy Donovan, and I have to ask you, does it feel exciting that there's even murmurs that he could be gone?
I mean,
generally curious.
Yeah, of course. And not to say, like, people try to paint Billy like he's horrible. He's not horrible. He's an okay head coach, and I think that you have to be in the right situation scenario. Not every coach is good is good in every scenario, and I think that comes down to Billy Donovan. But I think ultimately, like, when you look back at Billy Donovan's time here at Chicago, it's stagnant play calling. That type of thing that just limits players. And not to say that we've had the best roster, but Billy Donovan has even used players to their best ability. Like Zach Lavine is like a 42% catch and shoot player. Why have we run less than 3% catch and shoot opportunities for him since Billy Donovan's been there? It just doesn't make any sense, right? Like if you already don't have a great roster, you can at least put those players in the best position to be successful. And so Billy Donovan just doesn't do that consistently enough for me.
Yeah, if you ask me, I think Billy Donovan is a mid-tier coach. I feel like a lot of fans in the NBA hate their head coach on their team. I think he's all right, but I think he's a very rigid coach that doesn't really make adjustments for his roster enough. I kind of feel like change has to be made for the Bulls, but it feels weird because it feels like the team is kind of at a weird inflection point where the Zach Lavine domino is really like the last big one to fall. There's some more changes to the team, which we'll get to, but I feel like Billy Donovan's tenure in Chicago was okay, but I do feel like he's not the long-term head coach for this young team that the Bulls are trying to move into.
I agree with that. And he already left OKC because he didn't want to rebuild, even though, of course, in hindsight, he really would have went through 2 years of a rebuild before that team was ready to take off.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think everything kind of comes to end. There's a time for everything to end, and Billy Donovan's time in Chicago it's about getting to that time.
I can agree. Before we get to the people that are no longer on this team, I want to run by our last podcast, revisiting expectations for the 2024 season. Coming in, I know that you were just ready to watch Bulls basketball, see the development of players. But I must say, we talked a bit about Coby White on last year's podcast, but seeing the boom and development he had, I really feel like that made the entire season for the Chicago Bulls, seeing that young player make big leaps aside from the constant Zach Lavine chatters. How did it feel to know that Coby White, in my opinion, looked like the most improved player last year for the Chicago Bulls? What was that like?
It feels good because Coby White is a player that was drafted here. We didn't acquire him through anything else. We drafted him, and he's gone through up and down. His role has changed every single year. Even this upcoming year, even after his breakout year, his role still changing again now with the acquisition of Josh Giddey. But he's always been a player that has never complained, has always found some type of way to contribute. And so it all coming together last year for Coby White felt amazing as just a Bulls fan to watch. Him stepping up in big games the way that he did. Yeah, it sucked that he kind of hit a wall there towards the end of the season after his injury and never really quite got back to what he was the first like 3-4 months of the season. But it was just good to see that you had, like, it gave us some type of shining light in this team that's just been, it's been depressing here. So
Yeah. I gotta say, for me, it was pretty big because I thought Coby White was a guy that was on the way out. I didn't think that Coby White's value was where the Bulls had wanted it to be. And he quickly went from a guy that he's cool, he's on a roster, he's like a nice player, to no, he's in the future for whatever the Bulls are trying to cook up. The stuff that he was doing at the very beginning of the season, the high assist games, the high scoring games, right? The combination of these two things really on a team where his role kept shifting, where he was playing like that with Zach Lavine, deferring every now and then Zach goes down and you see him really go on a huge run. But even in the DeMar DeRozan lineups, which kind of had me scratching my head, because there were times where it's like, okay, DeMar DeRozan is kind of dominating the ball a bit more over Coby White. I think Coby should get more of the shine in these aspects here, there. But now it's like this feels comfortably in his hands outside of the Zach Lavine trade, which has yet to happen. But he hit so many highs for the Bulls. And I must say, that injury looked very nasty. If people were watching the game when it happened, it looked like he wasn't going to come back for the season. So him not playing that well after the injury wasn't really surprising to me. I'm just happy that he's healthy and revamped for another Chicago Bulls season. I think he's going to be a very important piece, especially with all the moves that the Bulls have made that have been kind of questionable in terms of their direction. I feel like he's the one player that we understand what to expect.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, when you look at Coby White, and I love that you touched on the fact that you thought he was out of there, like a lot of Bulls fans. When I started Chicago Bulls Central, the first video that I ever had that popped off was the title was "The Bulls Would Be Crazy to Trade Coby White," because that was the offseason after we acquired Zoe, after we acquired Alex Caruso.
Yeah,
they traded for Vooch, and everybody was like, "Oh, the Bulls need to trade Coby White right now to get a power forward." I was like, the Bulls would be crazy to trade Coby White. At that time, he's like 20 years old. I'm like, you're out your mind to trade Coby White at this point in time. And so, of course, you know, when you don't have that subscriber count behind you at that time, people like to argue with you. Now it's like I've gotten to the point now where like I say stuff with Bulls and people are like, oh, well, yeah, that's what's happening. I'm like, no, I'm just giving my opinion. Chill out here. I'm not reporting on anything. Yeah, so it felt really good in that sense to see Coby. The conversation around Coby turn over 3 years. It went from a lot of Bulls fans calling him to be traded to now, if you bring up trading Coby White, a lot of Bulls fans will damn near spit at you. And so, you know, it's really good. And he did step up in the right moments. Until his injury, he was leading the league in minutes. Him and DeMar DeRozan were number 1 and number 2. He was leading the league in clutch minutes as well. And he's not a guy who's just a scorer either. Like, he led the league in foul and charges drawn up until his injury as well. Like, there's a lot of things that Coby White did to step up his game. And when we had that conversation about the most improved player, it came down to nobody improved their role, their output, and their minutes or everything else more than Coby White. Not even
everything was up.
Yeah, everything was up. So.
And like, I don't mean to rant about this, but I really hate what that award has come to. Like, why is Desmond Bane getting snubbed for Ja Morant to get it when we know that Ja Morant was a high draft pick that was going to do good things? Like, they're even saying this year Wemby might be the favorite, and it's like, Wemby, the first overall pick that we know has talent. We're kind of getting away from the meaning of what a real most improved thing is, where, hey, you see Coby White, a guy that was averaging single digits, was not averaging that many points, literally have doubles in all of his categories. He was that good of a player. The high assist games as well. Like, he was the opposite of a one-dimensional player, which does take me to the next question. DeMar DeRozan was an interesting Bull. I gotta say, and this is a callback to our last podcast from last year. If y'all missed it, go tap in there. But I remember that like his first couple of seasons were dominant for the Bulls, where he was shooting at a ridiculous clip from the mid-range. He still is one of the best crunch time scorers in the NBA. But it kind of felt like this time around, his impactfulness for the Bulls wasn't the same, even though the numbers were also there. It just felt like a weird year for DeMar. It kind of felt like the Coby White lineups without him were slightly better, and it felt like the Bulls needed to move in a different direction. So trading him to the Kings, where they weren't able to get so much value, I'm just curious about what your thoughts about his overall season was, and are you satisfied with what you got back in return for trading him?
So DeMar's season was an interesting one. It's really a tale of two halves, and while the numbers kind of stayed the same, you would really have to like watch those games. DeMar towards the back half of that season was deferring to Coby White. Like, he picked his spots as far as like throughout their first like two and a half quarters of the game. He basically let Coby and Io cook. And then he stepped in when needed. And then, of course, down the stretch, because the Bulls, out of the 39 games, 27 of those games were clutch games, which is clutch wins, which is crazy.
I can relate.
Yeah, he stepped up big time in those moments because he's the one that he can get a bucket or he can get to the free throw line. So DeMar DeRozan's season was one that you could tell that he kind of embraced the growth of Coby and Dosunmu. And Ayo's another player that grew tremendously for the Bulls last year, especially when he stepped into that starting lineup. And so for that part, I'm forever grateful because there are a lot of people in DeMar's spot where it's a contract year. He's been the guy that wouldn't necessarily defer in the same way that he did. Now, I still think he got too many shots in the fourth quarter. That's more of a Billy Donovan thing because DeMar DeRozan is Billy Donovan's safety net. But yeah, I mean, I appreciate DeMar's season for what it was. Now, as far as what we got back, I mean, at that point, you kind of do what you got to do when somebody's an unrestricted free agent and the market is already dictated. Like nobody is really going to give up anything for that guy. Now, had the Bulls moved him at the trade deadline, that would have been a different story. But the Bulls kind of sitting on their hands, and that's been the story of this front office. They wait. They're 6 months behind every single move that they make. And because of that, they got back Chris Duarte, who I'm not really high on at all. You got 2 second-round picks. I mean, I'm glad that you got something, but it just goes to show again, had that front office not been so hell bent on just holding on to everything when they did, we could have got a lot more back for it.
Especially in the era where teams have a new CBA that is impacting every move that they make. Not moving off of a player at the right time will leave you severely hurting, because in the past, there might be some teams that could overpay when no one else is really beating them out. But now it's like, if we make these moves and we cook ourselves and we are over this whole apron, we could lose our job. So now it's a lot more stingy of a market now, I would say.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But that takes us to Zach Lavine, which I got to say this, man. Zach Lavine might be the most polarizing player in the NBA. And it really makes no sense why he's in that role. He missed a lot of time this year. He was on the verge of being traded to the Pistons. He quickly got the surgery because he realized, I'm not going to Detroit. I respect Zach. I understand how that goes. But I feel like Zach Lavine is a much better player than the conversations about him. Everything is pointing to his overall injuries, this and that. But in terms of his game, he's a much better player than, hey, we have to find multiple first-round picks to attach just to trade Zach Lavine. I feel like the conversations about him have been weird. I think he is in a position where on this younger Bulls team, he'll be able to rebuild his value up and maybe get traded during the season. But how do you feel about Zach Lavine and what his reputation has become now?
I always explain it as this when it comes to Zach. I explain it as a Venn diagram, right? Like it's his contract, the injury concerns, and then the question about how does he contribute to winning. Those things are all overlapping at this point in time with the new CBA, that it just leads to teams questioning on if Zach Lavine is the guy to attach those assets to. And I think when it comes down to it, you look at it from a bear's bone. I'm going to tear down some of those arguments, right? I'm not saying that Zach Lavine is any type of perfect player, but between Zach Lavine getting to Chicago and up until this past season, he played 85% of the games that was available to him. 85% of the games. From 2019 into 2023, there was only 9 players in the NBA that scored more points than Zach Lavine. That's it. Now, is he a flawed defensive player? Yes. Do you need better defenders around him? Yes. Is his basketball IQ sometimes trash in clutch time? Absolutely. He has real flaws. But the conversation has now become around Zach like he's this terrible player, and he's not. He's a flawed player, but he's definitely a player that I'll say this. If Zach Lavine is your second best player on your team, not like the DeMar thing where it's 1A, 1B. If he's clearly the second best player on your team and you have somebody that's head and shoulders better than him, you're a playoff team, not just an entry-level playoff team. You should be getting at least to the second round. If Zach Lavine is your third best player on your team, you better damn near be a championship caliber team, because that's how good Zach Lavine can be in what he does well. Yes, you have to construct your team in a way to help mitigate some of his shortcomings. Yeah. But it's just like now, like it's this tear down thing of like, let's talk about Zach like he's terrible. And he's not. He's not great, but he's not terrible either.
I think it's so weird because it's like literally if you just I understand he missed a lot of time this year, but literally not not even 2 years ago, he had a season where he was almost 50, 40, 90 on 65 games played. Like, I can't look at Zach and think that he's that bad of a player. So I do feel like he'll be able to rebuild his value up this year. I don't want to bring up the workout videos because this happens every year for a lot of these players. Zion is another polarizing figure with that stuff as well. But I just think that for the Bulls, their goal has to be to try to get up of his contract because they couldn't do it this offseason. I think once he's actually back on the floor and playing at a super high level, that will bridge his value a bit closer. Because really, it's just like the tail end of the contract and people haven't seen him in a while, so they just think he's not good for whatever reason. When he's on the court playing basketball and frying very good defenders, I think people will see what his value is. So I can't wait to see what that looks like. But that kind of does take us to the other part, which I gotta say this, I'm not a Bulls fan, but I was very upset seeing this, like irrationally upset. The Alex Caruso trade for me, I just gotta be honest, right? It made me so mad for Bulls fans because I'm thinking about it like, okay, months ago you had many people calling for Alex Caruso where there was picks involved, multiple players involved, multiple teams involved. And to see him wind up going straight up 1-for-1 for Josh Giddey, I gotta say, for me, it feels very underwhelming. Now, I've also said this. I think that Josh Giddey, while he was a negative in OKC, for the Bulls, I think he'll be a lot better because he'll have the ball in his hands more. So there is a chance that he could be a totally different player on the Bulls than he was in OKC. I just feel like for you to do a trade with the team that has all the draft picks, everything, and they somehow do this Jedi mind trick on you to where it's just straight up, it feels kind of criminal to me. I got to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, so the way that I've chosen to look at this trade, and I'm with you, I was pissed off, right? Like, I'm still pissed off about it. But the way that I've chosen to look at this trade is that, once again, the front office missed their opportunity to strike. Now, in trading Alex Caruso, who was your best trade asset, who has 1 year left on their deal, you should have at least got some second. Like, didn't OKC just trade 5 second-round picks in the draft as well? Something like that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's bad that you didn't get picks. But then when you tear all that down, and like I said, I'm not trying to take away or glaze over that. No, the fact that they didn't get any picks in that trade is a travesty. It's stupid. It's front office malpractice. But when you tear it down and look at the player that you got, right? And Josh Giddey, I'm sorry, in a weak draft, he would have went in the top 5 in this draft. He was in this draft period.
I agree. Yes.
So if the Bulls are trying to rationalize, they're looking at it and saying, you've gotten a guy who's 21 years old, who all 3 years of his league has been in the top 10 in triple doubles each one of those years. The last time he did have the ball in his hands, he damn near averaged a triple double, and you're hoping that in putting him in a position to where he's going to be able to play make and do the things that come the best to him, that you're going to get value there. But even then, you still have now, he's a restricted free agent at the end of the season. You're going to have 1 year of seeing what he looks like on your team. Yeah, 3 years of data on another team before you have to lock him into a big time extension. Aren't you just trying to get off a big time contract with Zach Lavine? The Bulls have a chance. If Josh Giddey comes in here and gets anything close to that 17-8-6 season that he had in 2022-23, you're gonna have to damn near max him out. You're gonna be right back in the same position with a player that, I'm sorry, in a contract year, anybody can have a big year. I don't know. I like Giddey as a player. It's just the circumstances around it that are just like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, there's a lot of questions I have because I think Josh Giddey as a player, again, like you said, he can be a triple-double threat. We saw what he was doing overseas against Team USA, right? Like, he was doing some good things. I just think after Coby White has the year that he has, instead of empowering him with the ball more, you now have another guard that's going to be in the backcourt with him where you push Coby more to the 2 guard because Coby is the better off-ball player than Josh Giddey. And you kind of take away touches away from Coby for Josh Giddey, which can be cool. But as you said, you're going to have to pay Coby White. You're going to have to pay Josh Giddey at some point, right? So these things are going to intersect. And I just feel a way about it because I think it really depends on what do you think the ceiling of Coby White and Josh Giddey are. Do you think that they can legitimately be the backcourt of the Bulls' future, or do you think it's more so a case where it's really one or the other, and they just want to find who the better player is?
No, I think it could work, because when you look at Coby White, right, I'm not saying that it will work for sure, but I think that there is a space in when that it could work. Coby White didn't do the majority of the ball handling because he played with DeMar DeRozan. DeMar DeRozan did do a lot of the ball handling in the half court. If you're replacing those possessions with Josh Giddey over DeMar DeRozan, DeMar's a really good passer. Josh Giddey is a much better playmaker. He's in the 90th percentile of open shots generated for his teammates. So I think that they're hoping there's some synergy there, as well as if you look at it. And I know this is a very specific stat, but Josh Giddey, the way that he created open three-point shots, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Jalen Williams only hit those wide open threes at 32% and 35% respectively. Coby White and Zach LaVine in those same scenarios hit those shots at 42 and 44% respectively. So if the Bulls are looking at the analytics, they're hoping that Josh Giddey's playmaking and the open shots that he generates are going to give more opportunities for Coby and Zach LaVine to score. But you're still trying to thread a very, very clear needle there that you have to look at, man.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting. I do want to see how this looks again. Unlike a lot of people, I'm curious about the Bulls because it's such a weird thing that they've done, but there is a chance that if Josh Giddey takes that step, it can pan out for them. My only other question is like somehow Vucevic is also still on this roster. I have no idea where you are with it. I can see your face. You're not excited about that, are you?
Listen, I'm not as big of a Vooch hater as some people are. Okay. Vooch he's still towards the top of the league in double doubles, all that stuff. I think when you look at it, Nikola Vucevic and DeMar DeRozan start their offense basically in the same exact spots over the course of their career. They finish in different spots. DeMar likes to finish in the mid range. Vooch likes to finish closer to the rim, but because you had those two players that had to learn to play together because they like to generate their offense from that same spot, maybe they're hoping that you can get a little bit more out of him offensively, but he's goddamn barbecue chicken defensively. Like
he is.
I've seen plays where literally all Nikola Vucevic had to do was put his arm up, and he would have deterred the shot. And he just looks at it.
He just looks at it. Yeah.
If you get half your shoulder past Nikola Vucevic, he's letting you go. And so we heard though that Jalen Smith has been promised the opportunity to win the starting center position. So look out for that. That could be interesting. Okay. I think he could fit with a Josh Giddey in a faster paced offense. But when it comes down to it, I think the Bulls compounded a bad trade to get Nikola Vucevic even further by giving him a 3-year, $60 million deal at the time where everybody looked at it like you were betting against yourself. You didn't even let him get to free agency. Vooch wouldn't have got anything close to $20 million.
Everyone asks why are the Bulls doing that, because who's the competition for Vooch at this point? Like, I'm with you there for sure.
So listen, I hope that they can move Vooch by the trade deadline. I mean, at that close, he's closer to an expiring contract. He only has 1 year on his deal after this upcoming season. So maybe that point you can maybe move him. But then again, I don't want the Bulls attaching any assets to move off any of these old guys. So we'll see.
Well, I think the one silver lining is that 100%, and maybe because it's the Bulls, I should say 80%. But normally 100% something has to happen because you have too many log jams on this roster. Lonzo Ball is another guy we have to get to, which you know me, I'm the Lonzo Ball stan, but you do have a loaded backcourt there with guys that have to move, where Lonzo will have expiring money. He's in a contract year as well. I do expect there to be some type of shift. I don't even know what is fair to ask of Lonzo Ball since he hasn't played basketball in so long. He just began playing 5-on-5. Is that a asset you're looking to flip this season?
I mean, possibly, but then again, like I don't know what risk. I mean, I guess he's an expiring contract, so maybe at that point, every expiring contract can have some value. But we don't even know what Lonzo's going to look like. Like I always look at Jonathan Isaac as like kind of the timeline for players that have missed that much time, because he missed 2 years. Lonzo's missed 2.5, and even in Jonathan Isaac's first year back from his injury, he played 11 games and averaged 11 minutes per game. So, and Lonzo has had two. I call Lonzo, so on my show, I call Lonzo the Walking Dead. The reason why I do that is he has a dead person's meniscus in his knee, and he has a dead person's cartilage in his knee. He's literally the Walking Dead. They took cartilage and a ligament out of somebody else's knee and put it in your knee. So I don't have high expectations for Lonzo. Bulls fans get on me all the time about that because they're like, oh, Lonzo's going to come back and he's going to be this player and he's going to be off the bench. And I'm like, you got to think of this realistically. Even if Lonzo is fully healthy, that does not mean Lonzo is going to be anything close to what he was before he went down. And Agreed. I don't see a world in which the Bulls risk re-signing him no matter what he shows this season, because how are you going to make an investment in a player that unfortunately nobody's returned back from the injury that he's had? So
yeah. And like I've told you before, right? No one has, but I am in the business, especially with my team, in buying low on players. And I think that Lonzo Ball will be able to showcase some of whatever he could do. I do feel like he'll be a worse overall defender. We just haven't seen him, but I like to be optimistic because to me, if you're going to go through all this to put a dead man's cartilage in your knees, basically, you really want to hoop. So I'm hoping that he has a lot more success in this upcoming season, even as an asset for the Bulls to flip, which kind of brings me to the next player. You mentioned his name earlier. I want to give him all the flowers in the world. Dosunmu was spectacular last year, and I need people to like really sink this in. Defensively, he was a dog. He had absolutely great motor, but the shooting also being there with the scoring, I really think in a more expanded role, he could be a very valuable player for the Bulls. And if not for the Bulls, I guarantee you teams will be calling trying to get Ayo. Ayo is a very good player on a pretty good contract.
Oh, an excellent contract. Like I did a video not too long ago where I said Ayo, if the Bulls were to make Ayo available in trades, which I don't want them to do, if they did, he may be the most valuable trade chip in the league when you compare it to age. 24 years old. He's making $7 and $7.5 million respectively over the next 2 years. And when he was a starter, he was averaging 16, 4, 4 on 50% shooting from the field and like 40% shooting from three.
Very good.
Like, yeah, I mean, Dosunmu has so much raw potential there, and I do think that he can be a very, like, the fact that the Bulls, they benefited from the fact that he came off a very down season before they signed him to that contract, because Dosunmu
great move
would have taken a 3-year deal and just hit free agency this year instead of last year, easily a 12 to $16 million a year player.
Easy.
Yeah.
Easy. And like there's just so much use, especially in the modern era. There's so much use for a player who doesn't turn the ball over that much, doesn't complain, plays basketball games, high motor, plays defense, shoots threes. That archetype of player is gonna generate a lot of buzz in the NBA. So even if he doesn't find a place here on the Bulls, which I hope he does, there's definitely value you can get back that you might have missed from all of your other trades in that for sure. Now I'm hoping he doesn't become collateral just to get off of bad contracts. I hope that doesn't happen.
That would piss me the fuck off. I'm just gonna be 100%. I'm sorry. Like that would literally, if we have to come off of contract and a value young player like Lonzo just to come off like a Zach Lavine or Nikola Vucevic contract, I may walk into the United Center and put cases on all those bitches. Like I'm just going to
I can't blame you.
Everybody got to go. So
yeah, I can't blame you. Like already having things where like they waited too long, and then to make up for those mistakes, you make more mistakes. That's not what a good franchise does. So you're hoping that the Bulls can move into this newer, upcoming, fresh guide. That kind of takes me to the draft, right? You draft Matas, Chicago guy, wanted to be in Chicago, good play finisher archetype. I think he has a lot of areas in his game to grow, but he has the frame to be a pretty valid two-way player in the future. Where do you think he fits in for the future of this Bulls team?
It depends on a couple of things. Like, how much weight can he put on over the next few years? I have him playing 3 right away. Now, I think he is a long-term 4 if he can put on a little bit more weight. But that's what he's going to be a forward, whether it's the 3 or the 4 long-term. And he's an energy guy. Like, he has so much raw talent offensively, and he's an active defender. Right? He's not a great on-ball defender yet. But one thing I look at with players that young, and he's 19 years old, is how active are you? How much effort do you give? Because a lot of defense is effort, and he does give effort defensively. So I think when he learns to use his combination of size and length defensively, he can actually turn, and he already uses it on weak side blocks. Like he gets crazy block numbers, but Like we know, Gifted. Some casuals try to say blocks make you a good defender. It doesn't necessarily make
right.
any aspects of defense that not that, but like he has to become a better on-ball defender. But offensively, it comes down to this for me. I know that the knock on him is he's not a great three-point shooter. And if he has the mechanics to look like he can. But the question that I asked about Modest Buzelis is that if that three-point shot never comes, if it just never comes, how effective can he be in the things that he does well now? Running the court. Mm-hmm. He's a solid passer in transition. He's a great finisher. He has a nice mid-range game as well as far as floaters, things like that. I look at the archetype of what Modest Buzelis is, and to me, he's the type of guy that he stays around the league, and your team probably loves him for 8 to 10 years. If he can round out the efficiency shooting-wise, becoming a better three-point shooter and defender, then he has the possibility to be, I say, the third best player on your team. Again, I'm more realistic. I know some Bulls fans like he could be a star, but I'm not necessarily that until you show that to me. So I think he has the upside of being a really good forward in this league. Kind of like a more athletic Franz Wagner is the way that I look at it.
I think there's real optimism, man. I know he's not a good shooter, but people are mainly saying that because he didn't shoot well in college. In high school, he didn't have any problems. He just had a very down year at the college stage. I feel like collectively he's raw, but the skills in terms of being able to be a help side guy, right? Being able to be a athletic downhill presence and the size with the ball handling feel, even though his handle needs work, his confidence in himself to be like, I can do this, I can do that, right? Mm-hmm. Seeing the battles he was having with Cooper Flagg, who we look at to be like a generational prospect for next year's draft. I think if you give him 5 or 6 years in the Bulls offense, he can grow into that wing. Because day one, I think wing makes a ton of sense for him. I really do. Yeah. I just think if you're committing to a younger direction, he can get the burn. It's all about player development from that overall aspect. But if it all comes, all around, you're talking about a guy who can defend, block shots, shoot the ball, and cut to the basket dynamically, athletically more than anything else. Being a closeout guy day one is the formula to him having success on this Bulls team to me.
And I think they've set him up really nicely because Dosunmu was their best player in transition last year. So he's going to probably play a lot of minutes with Dosunmu. But on top of that, the open shots that Josh Giddey does generate, if you get somebody who cuts like Modest Buzelis does consistently, I think Josh Giddey is going to love playing with Modest Buzelis. So,
yeah. Free. So all of that stuff makes sense. I kind of want to ask you this question. So I know that you understand the Bulls might not be a great regular season team, but what do you think about the Eastern Conference and where the Bulls fit into it? There's been a lot of shifts, obviously. KCP coming over to the Eastern Conference, Paul George coming over to the Eastern Conference as well. How do you evaluate the Eastern Conference from a Bulls perspective?
Oh, I mean, I got a bunch of teams before the Bulls. Like I'm a Bulls fan, but I'm not crazy. Like all the top 6 teams last year are still above the Chicago Bulls. I still have the Philadelphia 76ers above the Bulls as well. And I do think that if fully healthy, which is a gamble in of itself, like the Charlotte Hornets, if Lonzo Ball is fully healthy, last time LaMelo Ball was fully healthy. Yeah. They won 43 games, something like that. You've now added Brandon Miller to that team and such. So I think that they could be a team as well. I don't see the Bulls being a bottom feeder in the East, but I do see them hovering around that 9-10 spot again, probably maybe even 10-11 spot, depending on health around the rest of the Eastern Conference.
I think they're better than the Nets. I think the Nets have a real shot.
We're better than the Nets, Gifted. Like, we can hoop up the Nets right now.
Yes. I think the Nets really might be the worst team in the league. Then they have a chance to. I know that we saw Detroit be so awful. I do think Detroit is also going to rebound well. I think the Bulls are going to be near like the Raptors or the Pistons or the Hornets. I think those are the teams that are younger teams but can actually give you some good fight.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So then I would say for the Bulls, what's the most important thing you're targeting to make this a successful season? What do they have to do, if it's not wins, obviously, to have a successful season in your mind? Is it offloading the bad contracts? If they don't, is it a failure? What are you looking for, Hayes?
The most is development of the young guys. That's the biggest thing that I'm looking for. Yeah, I would love to see them get off Vooch and Zach Lavine's contracts and things like that to kind of free that. But it really comes down to how many of these young guys aren't just players on your team, but the players that you can build with. We know that we believe it's Coby. We got to see another season with Coby, getting him and Josh Giddey on the same page. Io, and then, of course, Modest Buzelis. Like, those guys I want to see develop with the outside chance of still Patrick Williams, Julian Phillips, Dalen Terry. Like, I want to know how many of these young guys have some promise this year, because they haven't. Like, the Bulls have not prioritized development. They've prioritized winning. Since they traded for Vooch, got DeMar, got AC, they've been prioritizing winning. And I'm not to say that I want to see them lose. I don't. But I want to see the focus be, let's get these young guys reps. Let's see what we have in them. Let's let them go through their growing pains. And then we can see where we are based on that. So development is the first thing to me.
I think you said the biggest thing. Player development has to be the key. I got to be honest, man. I want to see a breakout season from Patrick Williams. He's such a weird player because he's very good, but he lacks confidence in himself to tap into his natural abilities to me. Like, he's showing you flashes where it's like, wow, he's a guy that can shoot 40% from three on decent volume. He can defend, but sometimes it's like, where is he on the floor sometimes? I really want to see him get that confidence.
Patrick Williams strikes me as, and I'm not going to go as in on it as I would on this joke if I was on my show, because I'm going to keep it respectful on But Patrick Williams reminds me of the virgin, and that you just need some older woman to get a hold of him one day, and he's just gonna have mad confidence.
Something,
like, right? Everybody knows that one time that you were a freshman and a junior or senior gave you a little play, your confidence was through the roof at that point in time. Patrick Williams has no confidence, bro. None. Now, I will say this: the best month I've ever seen of Patrick Williams' career was December, this past December in the NBA, and that was a time where the ball was moving more freely. DeMar and Zach were out, and the Bulls were just kind of running this offense where it was just like, we don't know exactly where the scoring is coming from, but Coby, but everybody's getting a shot. And Patrick Williams through that December, off the top of my head, it was like 14, 5, and 5 on something like that on really efficient shooting. If he can get to that this season, that's what I would like to see from Patrick Williams. If anything more than that, great, I'll take it. But I think he just needs to get to that level of just, and that goes back to the thing. Patrick Williams went from his rookie year being that of course, that young up and that rookie, and then immediately the Bulls started making moves to win now, and that pushed him further down the pecking order, and he became a role player at that point, and he just deferred basically. And I think he's never really gotten over that hump. Not blaming anybody for it, because as a player you got to want to go out and get it. But I think that if Patrick Williams was more implemented into the offense, where it was like, Pat, you're getting 8 shots tonight, take these 8 shots, we're running 8 plays for you, that maybe he would have been a little bit further along than this by now.
I think that's fair. I mean, again, we've seen glimpses, but I really feel like this could be the season for him to really put that together. Thoughts on Dalen Terry?
Listen, at this point, at this season, I just want to see Dalen Terry be an energy guy. Like, there is a lot of raw potential in Dalen Terry. Like, we had a game last year where he hit 4 out of 5 threes confident. Like, he just came down the court and was taking players off one dribble, step back threes, and we're just like, where the fuck has this been all season long? So Dalen has that potential to be really that Swiss Army knife player. I don't know if you ever want to rely on him to score a lot for you. I don't know if you ever want to rely on him to shut down or guard the other team's best player, but like, he's shown a little bit of everything. Getting steals, getting deflections, playing really good defense. Like, we all say that Dosunmu was Trae Young's daddy, but there was a game where Dosunmu was out and Dalen Terry guarded Trae, and it was like, hey, Dalen can guard people out here. So like, I think a perfect season for Dalen is like to just do a little bit of everything. Like, if he can get to averaging like 8, 3, 2, and 1 or something like that, that'll be really good just to show that he can stay on the court. I like Dalen Terry. He's a really good kid. I actually met him. His mama follows me on IG. I feel like I'm a member of his mama fine too, by the way. Dalen Terry mama fine. But shout out. So I know that he wants it bad, and he's determined to be something in this NBA. I just think that he just has to let the game come to him, and hopefully in year 3 it starts doing that.
Yeah, I think that is another player that, again, has potential to do a lot of things. They just have to be utilized in proper lineups to make everything fit. I got to be honest, the player that I want to see growth from, and this might be asking a lot, but I'm looking at Coby, and the reason why I say Coby is, to me, the Josh Giddey stuff is they're trying to throw something to see what'll stick. And if Josh Giddey is good, then Josh Giddey and Coby White, at least for the next 3 to 4 years, are going to be your backcourt. And to me, the way that makes sense is if Coby White can become a legitimate defensive player. I think he's shown moments here or there. I don't think he's overall a high impact defender yet. But if he can take a leap defensively, now it's like, okay, Josh Giddey, boom. I can see Coby White fitting into that as the off-ball defensive guy who can also dominate on the ball when needed in his future. So defensively, I really want to try to see if we can get some more Coby White good instincts being built up. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, Coby White, when he got moved and regulated to the bench after the acquisition of like Lonzo and everybody, he started becoming a better weak side defender. Like his help defense got really, really good. I agree with you. Like if Coby White can keep his scoring around that 20, 21 points per game and turn into a plus defender, right? Just not a negative defender. That goes a long way with Coby White. I think the things that Coby White can improve on, he took so much of a leap last season. If you can just get 5% more out of anything else that you did, like that. Some Bulls fans argue with me and they say, like, how do you say that Coby White's not a star? Did you see his season last year? I'm like, yeah, he did it 1 year. I'm a Bulls fan. We had John Salmons average 20 and 4 one season when he got traded there. So it's like, I don't get impressed by one season. But now how do you do it? Because now also you're on the team scouting report. You weren't coming in the next season. People didn't know what last season. People didn't know what Coby was. So how Coby now adjusts to not having that safety net of Demar, being on the other team scouting report, probably first or second, depending on how you look at him and Demar and Zach Lavine. How he adjusts in this next season is going to be really telling to me, because while we just signed Coby White to a new contract last offseason, next year he's an expiring contract. So you got to really start showing some things there.
Yeah. That's why it's such an important season for him. Obviously, you already spoke on it. This Bulls team is probably not going to win a whole lot of games. You just want to see them have good habits and have the proper lineups and rotations. My question for you is, what pick do you think the Bulls need to get in this draft that will significantly change your perspective on how they can map out? Because again, this next upcoming draft is like the draft. Last year's draft was cool. It had a lot of role players who could be good right away, but they're not like stars. But this draft is a much deeper draft. Who are some prospects you're eyeing that could legitimately transform the Bulls' young core?
I mean, of course, Cooper Flagg, like that goes without saying there. We're just going to start off there. Like Cooper Flagg coming to the Chicago Bulls completely changes our outlook. But I say, like, outside of those guys, Cooper Flagg, Ace Bailey, clearly, I still look at a guy, of course, Malik from that's going to be in Duke with Cooper Flagg, the center there. I think that would be a really good long-term replacement for at that center position. Asa Newell as well from Georgia. I like him a lot for that power forward position there. And Drake Powell. I like a lot. Like, honestly, anybody who's slated to go in the top 10 to 12 can really help the Bulls. Now, the problem is that the Bulls pick is top 10 protected to the Spurs, so he has to be in the top 10. But I think a lot of the guys in that top 10 can help the Chicago Bulls. Now, some of them, I will say this, depending on where the Bulls pick at, because they do have Josh Giddey, they do have Coby White. If you get another guard, you may have to start selling off some other assets. So,
got to. I don't believe in the Bulls being in a logjam as a young team. I think you have to choose one struggle. You have to have young guys who get the time to actually develop, not a bevy of young guys who just don't really fit. And game to game to game, okay, he's good here, he's good there. To get real development, you need actual reps, and you can't get that without having actual, time to play.
Yeah, I will say this too, and this is not just for the Bulls, but y'all mark this down. Remember, I said this gift. I know you will remember a sleeper in this draft. I think he'll go in the top 15, but I don't think people are talking about enough as having a star level ceiling. Hugo Gonzalez from Spain. Remember, I said that.
Really?
Just remember, I said I've watched so much of his tape over like the last 3 months. Just remember, I said that name. And if 2-3 years down the road we revisit this, just remember I said Hugo Gonzalez. Remember that.
What does he do well?
A little bit of everything, honestly. Like from a scoring aspect of a long athletic wing, he also gives tremendous effort defensively. But the thing that I like about Hugo Gonzalez is how he scores, how he is as an on-ball creator, even being 18 years old, and how he scores in isolation. When he gets in isolation, I'm telling you right now, because he plays over in EuroLeague. I've watched a lot of Euro basketball the last 2 years. This guy is taking grown men off the dribble, and he doesn't shy away from physicality at all.
That's a good sign.
Yeah, that's especially for a European guard. I'm telling you, man, there's times where literally he got elbowed in the nose, he was bleeding, bro, and he just was still out there balling, bro. I'm telling you.
You gotta love that. That sounds like a dog. I'm gonna definitely look him up after this podcast. Hugo Gonzalez. Remember, you heard it here first. If he does pop this part of the pod will get clipped for CEO Hayes. Big shout out to you for that. I'm gonna say this then. So just zooming out for the league as a whole, are you excited for the NBA season? What are some of the biggest storylines you're looking forward to
for the NBA season overall?
Yeah.
I mean, everything. So Boston, can they do it again? Like we've seen teams after they have those amazing seasons and finally win the title, they kind of let down some, not because they're not still aiming for a title, but because they realize how to pace themselves now, right? So I'm looking at the Celtics for sure. Outside of that, Denver's a team that I'm watching a lot for to see if they can get back to being what they were looked at before. But then also who really becomes or starts making a bigger case for themselves to be the new face of the league. Anthony Edwards is a player that I love. I don't talk about him like this perfect player like some people do. He still has some things that he really needs to work on to truly, I think, ascend to that superstar level. But that Minnesota Timberwolves team was so good in the playoffs last year. I hate that the season came to the end the way that it did, but I'm still looking at that Minnesota Timberwolves team. And then Wemby, man. Wemby, I talked about on the last From the Logo, man. I'm watching a lot of Wemby basketball. I made the mistake and said Spurs there. No, because if Wemby's not playing, I'm not watching. But if Wemby's playing, I'm watching.
I can agree with a lot of those. I think for me, the Wolves are probably my most important team to watch because the CBA stuff, they pretty much brought back everyone, but a lot of it hinges on this season. If it doesn't go right this season, Cat could be out the door, which could shift the entire NBA where he goes, right? Right. Also, the Bucks with the Dame trade didn't go right the first year. Guys got hurt. They had a pretty decent offseason. What their success looks like, and if they don't have success, is Dame now on the move. There's a lot of things to monitor, but I'm super excited as a content creator for the upcoming season. And I gotta say this, for the Chicago Bulls, I have a lot to watch for. Lonzo, I get to monitor Io's overall development. The Zach Lavine trade, who could go to a team and actually swing their cases. If he's balling out, we got to see how that goes. It could be the Hawks. Just putting some out there for you. And I would say the long-term development of Coby White and Josh Giddey, just seeing how that backcourt really blends. I can't wait to see it, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be fun. The Bulls season is going to be fun. Like I say on my show, the Bulls are going to play a lot more exciting brand of basketball. That doesn't necessarily mean wins. But if you watch the Bulls, especially in the half court the last couple of seasons, it's been ugly in the half court. I think with Josh Giddey's creation now, going younger, more athletic across the board, it's going to be a fun offense to watch.
Yeah. Well, Hayes, I appreciate you coming on to the podcast to discuss your team, the Chicago Bulls. If you made it this far, guys, leave comments and questions about what you think the Bulls' future could look like. Hayes, any last comments for episode 56 of the pod?
Yeah, man. Make sure y'all check out From the Logo. This will be our first full season doing From the Logo podcast, and we're really excited about that. We're doing going division by division now over the next couple of weeks, each episode breaking down one of the divisions in the NBA. So make sure you guys go over to Player's Choice, check out From the Logo podcast, and you catch me and Gifted having conversations like this all the time.
Absolutely. And they're a lot less filtered. I will say that. So definitely go tap into From the Logo on Player's Choice for that. But as always, this is the end of the episode. I'll catch you guys for the next NBA team that we cover. As currently on the podcast, we're going through all 30 NBA teams. This was the Chicago Bulls. Go check out Hayes. He does a lot of great work covering Chicago content, basketball and football, and even more. So he just has so many good things he's doing in the digital podcasting space. So big shout out to Hayes. All of his links are going to be in the description below. Have a good one, people. And remember, keep watching basketball. The season is very, very, very close. Peace out, people.